Well, in the process of restoring my John Deere B, I found a bearing that needed to be replaced for the first reduction gear. And it's kind of an oddball size. It doesn't have an inner race, and then it also has a snap ring groove. John Deere wanted $149 plus shipping and tax and everything for this bearing, and I didn't really want to spend that on a tractor I spent $600 purchasing. What I was able to find after some careful searching was the same size bearing, no inner race, but missing a snap ring groove. So what I'm going to attempt today is to cut the snap ring groove into this bearing. The first step of the process is going to be to remove the existing blade. I'm going to be removing the riving knife. So it's worth noting that this saw blade has a 5/8 inch arbor. This matches the size of the metal cutting blade that I'm using in its place. Finally, I'll replace my zero clearance insert. It just so happens to be the correct width for this blade, so we'll leave that in place. I'm going to set the height of the blade to correctly match the slot in the bearing. I'm going to set the fence to the correct location. Lock it down. And then finally, I'm just going to clamp a stop block in place to give me something to guide the bearing as I rotate it through the blade. This may need to be adjusted slightly, but we're going to make a test cut before cutting the final bearing anyway. See, that fits in there. And all we'll have to do is rotate that bearing with the blade running. On this first cut, I'm going to cut into this edge of the old bearing. This gives me a practice run. I can compare it to the groove on the original bearing, measure everything. If it's set up correctly and the two slots match, I can try it on the good bearing. I don't want to mess this one up. I'm going to use some welding gloves for the remainder of the cut. It's going to be harder to feel what's going on, but the bearing is getting warm due to being cut by an abrasive blade. My test cut is complete. You can see all the smoke in the foreground. I believe some of the sawdust left in the saw may be burning. I'm going to have to investigate that. However, I do have a snap ring groove in my bearing. It appears to have a perfectly flat groove, so it should accept a snap ring just fine. And I'm going to grab some calipers and ensure that it's in the proper spot and it's the proper depth. It does line up with the old slot where I had the fence set up. So it should be a perfect match compared to the old one. The snap ring snapped onto the bearing with no issue. I could maybe increase the depth of cut just a hair, but the width is perfect. The location looks good to me. All that this snap ring does is retain the bearing from falling into the transmission on this tractor. Your application may be different, but for what I'm doing, I believe it'll be sufficient. So now let's cut the real one. All right, so as we grind, the wheel is going to get smaller, so I'm gonna measure the depth quick. so I'm just going to raise the blade slightly. After my second pass, it might be hard to see, the old groove and the new groove are identical. They line up exactly where they need to be. They're the right depth. And there we go. Snap ring is on. Fits perfect. It's in there tight. It's not going to fall off or anything, but it's not bound up in there. It still spins freely. Yeah, this is a legitimate technique. I would do it again with a few precautions. And it saved me a trip to the machine shop, and it also saved me about 130 bucks all told, if not more. This bearing I got, it's a new old stock bearing from eBay. I paid about 20 bucks. Deere wanted $150 plus shipping and tax and everything for this one. And fundamentally the only difference between this one and this one was that snap ring groove.